Tonight,
Free Palestine!
combating anti-Semitism. 2 young Jewish diplomats gunned down in Washington, D.C. Our panel is with us to discuss. Plus,
on this vote, the yeas are 215, the nays are 214, with one answering present. The bill is passed.
the president's big, beautiful bill passes the House, the hurdles it now faces in the Senate, and more fallout over former President Biden's health, his cognitive decline, and accusations of a cover-up, now complicated by the announcement of his cancer diagnosis. We discuss it all tonight on Faith Nation Friday. From the Oval Office to the halls of Congress, there were several major breaking news stories in Washington this week. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder. Here to help us digest it all, our political panel, Nathan Gonzalez, editor and publisher of Inside Elections, and Raj Nair, CBN digital producer. Gentlemen, welcome. Good to have you with us this Friday. Let's start on a very somber note, the tragic shooting that happened Wednesday night near Capitol Hill. 2 young Israeli diplomats gunned down, leaving an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum. The gunman was heard shouting, "Free Palestine." President Trump condemned the shooting and called it an act of anti-Semitism. Nathan, let's start with you and your reaction to the shooting and the response we've seen in the aftermath.
Well, first of all, it's terrible. It's terrible not just because it's more persecution of Jewish people. It's terrible as someone who lives in D.C., not too far from where this happened. It's awful, and we shouldn't be surprised, but it's just another reality of a terrible situation. I think that it is we need to be careful about how we frame this issue. I know that in some media reports it was that these were embassy staffers, but the embassy is 5 miles away from this happened, that they were killed because they were Jewish. And I think acknowledging that is a first step in handling all this.
Yeah, and Raj, anti-Semitism, it is just a growing problem in America.
You know, I spent the past decade of my life basically trying to combat anti-Semitism. So this is very, very personal. And I, watched all the documentaries about the Holocaust and thought to myself naively, well, that could never happen here. I'm here to tell you that it can, and it is. The UN aid chief basically had this quote a couple of days ago that 14,000 Gazan babies were going to die in 2 days because of what Israel was doing. And, he later retracted that statement. But that soundbite, that fake soundbite went across the world and inspired crazy people like this to pick up a gun, pick up a knife, and find the first Jew that they see. So it's incumbent upon us to tell the truth. And this is exactly what he's not freeing Palestine. He didn't do this for Gaza. This is pure, unadulterated Jew hatred.
The shooting comes at a very tense time for U.S.-Israel relations. President Trump, he bypassed Israel on his Middle East tour. And then this week there were reports the U.S. is working directly with Hamas to try to bring an end to the war in Gaza. The U.S. also, we've been negotiating directly with Iran. Raj, is there daylight? Are we starting to see some daylight between Israel and the U.S.?
I think the answer is yes. I mean, he didn't stop in Israel when he visited Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. I think Trump wants to get victories. He wants to get W's as quickly as he can, and it's not happening. The Abraham Accords between Saudi Arabia and Israel stalling. There's a lot of I don't like what you're doing here when it comes to Gaza, the humanitarian aid crisis. Netanyahu and Trump are not seeing eye to eye on some things. So I wouldn't say it's like a freezing of relationships, but there's definitely some daylight between the two administrations at this point.
Yeah, Nathan, did you want to weigh in on that?
One of the challenges, I think, is that I do think that the U.S. and Trump want to be allies with Israel, but Trump likes to fashion himself as this world peacemaker, that when he is in charge, the world is at peace. And so if Netanyahu's actions are not facilitating that, then there's going to be some tension there, and I think that's part of what you're seeing.
So new intelligence reports show Israel plans to strike Iranian nuclear facilities if negotiations between the U.S. and Iran fall through. Nathan, what happens to U.S.-Iran relations and also U.S.-Israel relations if this does happen?
I'm not a foreign policy expert, but this would not be good. I just don't. It's hard to see how this is nothing but an escalation that expands, just beyond the two countries and expands even outside the region, I hesitate to even go on where that escalation would be.
Raj, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you got to think that Iran's been preparing for this for a decade now at this point, if not longer. So you got to think they have, these bunkers very far underground, very well protected. So even with Israel, these bunker busting bombs, will they really stop Iran's nuclear program? I don't think so. I mean, maybe they have intelligence that I'm unaware of, but yeah, this might just create a larger problem. But at the same time, if there's an enemy that's dangling, hey, we want to destroy your country, what else is Israel going to do? So it's a very precarious situation.
Let's shift gears a little bit here and talk about South Africa. This week, the White House hosted the president of South Africa. What started with pleasantries in the Oval Office ended in a pretty tense exchange with Trump accusing South Africa of white genocide. We have some sound. Let's go ahead and listen, guys, and then we'll discuss.
I must tell you, Mr. President, we have had a tremendous number of people, especially since they've seen this. Generally, they're white farmers, and they're fleeing South Africa, and it's a very sad thing to see. But I hope we can have an explanation of that, because I know you don't want that.
We were taught by Nelson Mandela that whenever there are problems, people need to sit down around a table and talk about them.
Well, there are problems.
And this is precisely what we would also like to talk about, including, of course, trade matters, investment matters.
Raj, what did you make of that exchange and this situation of the United States letting in some South Africans because of what the White House is calling genocide and persecution?
Well, I've spent some time in South Africa, and I've seen the dynamic between Afrikaners and the black folks that are from South Africa, and it's awkward. I mean, there's definitely tension. This isn't a South thing where there's people that maybe little racist. Like it's very palpable. So that's not shocking that this is happening to me, because when I went there, I was like, wow, this is really happening. But that exchange was definitely awkward. But I do think that there's obviously the political idea of having white refugees is going to raise a bunch of red flags. But there's definitely something happening here, and I think the South African president did a very good job of mediating so it didn't get out of hand like it did with Zelensky back in the day, a few weeks ago when Zelensky was in the White House. But I think there's something to this, but what comes of it, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Nathan, President Trump clearly has no problem addressing the elephant in the room with these world leaders.
You are a world leader coming to the U.S. and coming to the Oval Office. You should either be prepared to be ambushed or prepared to be extremely grateful and thankful and to really lay it on thick in complimenting the president. He will respond to that. But if there's any sort of tension coming into the meeting, you should be prepared for something like what we just saw happen with the president of South Africa.
Okay, we have about 1 minute left before we go to break, but I want to talk to you guys about what's being called JetGate. The U.S. formally accepted the $400 million jet from Qatar. Just a couple of quick thoughts on that. Raj, we'll start with you.
I mean, when he was campaigning in 2016, he was lambasting people for accepting foreign gifts, and now he's accepting this plane from an entity, a country that has, really close ties with Hamas. It's like, listen, even no matter what you think about Trump, this is my opinion and my opinion only. I can see how this can be construed in a very negative light. But hey, it's a big, beautiful plane. It's shiny. It's new. It's $400 million plane. So why not? Who am I to judge? But I can see how people on the other side of the aisle would think this is quite hypocritical.
Yeah, Nathan, it's not, and it's both sides of the aisle that are really kind of criticizing the president here.
It's either an attempted bribe or it's an attempted to something with the safety of the president. Take aside, it's a gift that he shouldn't take from a foreign government. It doesn't even make economic sense. It's probably going to take maybe $1 billion to outfit it and make it safe to put the president of the United States up in the air, and that's going to take years anyway. Which then we wasted the years that we're already have 2 new Air Force Ones that are in the pipeline, even though those have been delayed. I think it's preposterous.
Okay, coming up, guys, Trump's big, beautiful bill clears the House, but now faces some big pushback in the Senate. We will break it down when Faith Nation returns. Welcome back. Well, a big win for President Trump this week. Speaker Mike Johnson was able to rally the troops and get Trump's big, beautiful bill through the House, despite some Republican holdouts. Nathan, to you first, what hurdles does this bill now face in the Senate?
I would say the deficit. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin was just talking about how he is concerned that the bill is going to add to the deficit, and this is a good case of where President Trump, I don't believe he's really a true conservative, but he's coming into conflict with Republicans who are on the Hill, who are conservative. And ultimately, up to this point, President Trump has always gotten his way. But what does that look like? Does that mean that some of the tax cuts are going to have to maybe not be in it in order to increase the revenue? Or will there have to be more spending cuts, maybe to Medicaid, in order to bring that the bill more into a fiscal balance?
Yeah, the deficit was a big issue for some of those Republican holdouts in the House, too. So the bill includes some changes to Medicaid requirements, Raj. Do you see this being a factor with voters in 2028 and the midterms? I guess I should say the 2026 midterms and presidential election in 2028.
Well, totally. I think that a lot of people are making the point this is happening early. This isn't, I mean, you made that point, Nathan, that this is happening early on, so maybe they have time to sell this. But I think going back to the point is that this is about the deficit. Rand Paul said, it is important. He said, we've never, ever voted to raise the debt ceiling this much. It'll be a historic increase. I think it's not good for conservatives to be on the record supporting a $4 trillion or $5 trillion increase in the debt ceiling. So when it comes to Medicaid and cuts and the border wall and the deficit, at the end of the day, he has time to sell this before the midterms. But cutting Medicaid, even if it's for, quote, the 29-year-old in their parents' basement, or illegal immigrants or whatever you might have, he has the time to sell it and see and show that it's actually working.
And Nathan, do you think the Medicaid requirements, could this really hurt Republicans in the next elections?
Certainly has that potential. I know Democrats are extremely excited. They believe the Republicans have given them something. They want to talk about health care. Those cycles have gone well, but we have to see when it's actually implemented, what does it look like and how voters feel about it, and particularly independent voters. Republican voters are going to give President Trump the benefit of the doubt. Democratic voters already are against it. So how do independent voters in the middle feel? And we're not going to know until they actually are wrestling with these new policies.
Let's shift gears here. There was a round of polling out this week from Marquette University and another from Reuters. Bottom line is that Americans still feel pretty wary about the economy, and now President Trump is proposing 50% tariffs on the European Union. Nathan, what will it take to regain consumer confidence?
They need to feel change in their day-to-day life, right? The cost of living, is it down? The things that they buy at the grocery store, is that less than what it was 3, 4, 6 months ago? Are they able to buy the things that they are used to buying? I think it's just about that really in the moment feeling. And right now, I think candidate Trump guaranteed a level of success that now they haven't delivered on so far, and they're trying to say, well, this is just short-term pain, but when does the gain come? And that is a huge unknown question.
Yeah. Raj, final thought?
Yeah, and basically, show me the money. Here in San Diego, we have a lexicon, and when people look at their 401ks, they text each other. I get a bunch of my buddies texting me, and after all these tariffs, they see their 401k going down, their stocks going down, and they say, quote, bro, as long as that's going down, and gas prices are going up and food stays as expensive and things are getting more expensive, when it's actually impacting someone's pocket, then we'll see that change.
Yeah. It's also back to school is also a big marker because parents are sending their kids back. They're buying school supplies. There's the activities. So people, that time of year tends to also change people's thoughts on the economy and how things stand in that regard. Okay, guys, stay with us. Up next, former President Biden's health, his stage 4 cancer diagnosis, and claims the White House hid his cognitive decline. We will discuss right after this on Faith Nation. And welcome back to Faith Nation. Former President Biden's health continues to make headlines. On Sunday, we learned of his stage 4 prostate cancer diagnosis. Days later, a book was released alleging the White House covered up his cognitive decline. Mixed reaction pouring in, many questioning if Biden actually knew about the cancer while he was in office. Others suggesting those types of questions are inappropriate and insensitive. Nathan, this is really a tightrope to walk. How do we have these conversations about the former president's health and a possible cover-up? And the serious questions that do need to be asked in that regard, and all the while showing compassion for him and his family and this latest news of the cancer diagnosis.
Well, how much time do we have, Jenna? These are all great questions. I think a couple things can happen at the same time. Meaning, I do think that the President Biden's inner circle did shelter him or shield him from public scrutiny or the media scrutiny. I think that also being physically challenged can be different than being cognitively challenged. Those can be two different things, but those lines are getting blurred. But I also want to say that the idea that the mainstream media was colluding to cover this up, I think, is just a fallacy. Could the media have done more to ask more questions? Sure, but I've been in media organizations where I don't even know, big organizations where I don't even know what someone 3 cubicles down is doing, let alone competing media organizations colluding together on what would be one of the biggest stories in the history of the country. That level of media working together, it didn't happen.
Yeah, you know, a lot of Americans at home, they saw the videos of the president falling up or down the stairs, or, you know, addressing a dead congresswoman. Raj, why do you think the media missed this big story?
I think there's 3 things happening here. 1, the cancer diagnosis. We can all agree that's horrible. We should be praying for him. 2, it's his cognitive decline, which is something that's very, very, very serious. But to the point you just made, the more important, the story to me is the cover-up. And, you know, people in the mainstream media say, well, why is everyone going to an MMA guy that hosts Fear Factor for their news? It's because you've been hiding it. You intentionally colluding. I don't want to get you flagged on YouTube, but you go back to COVID, where people would say certain things that got them in trouble, that got them deplatformed, that got them demonetized. And later, not only was it true, but you knew it was true in the moment. So the idea of this collusion of hiding, of doing things that you know for a certainty are false, and then shaming people, and historically in the past 5 years, you know, punishing people for having the audacity to even question these things, that to me is the real issue.
The book is called Original Sin by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. Raj, and they detail the cognitive decline and what they say was a cover-up by the people surrounding the president. Do you think this issue, Raj, sticks, and could it haunt Democrats in upcoming elections?
Well, yeah, here's a quote from CNN. Joe Biden had private moments where he could not recall the names of top aides, had increasingly limited private schedule, was prone to incoherence and losing his train of thought. I think you could argue people just don't trust, if you want to, however you want to frame it, the mainstream media, the left, the elites, whatever phrase you want to use. But there's this massive distrust of whatever this global thing is. And that's why people are flocking to an outsider like Trump and, frankly, Joe Rogan, because I just don't believe you anymore.
Yeah, and that's been a big part of the coverage this week, is actually Jake Tapper specifically getting a lot of criticism for, writing this book. Many people saying that he was one of the people who, didn't cover this hard enough. Let's shift gears, guys. Democrats, they suffered the loss of longtime Virginia Congressman Jerry Connolly this week. Connolly was 75 years old. The last 8 members of Congress to die in office were all Democrats, and that's led some inside that party to ask, is it time to have a conversation about age limits? Nathan, your thoughts on that?
I think both parties should be having a conversation about age limits. I think the country should be having a conversation about a constitutional amendment, because, and some people say, well, you can't limit them based on age, and like, we actually already limit them how old you have to be to hold office. You have to be 25 in the House, 30 in the Senate, and 35 to be president. So I think we should explore what that limit is, because Republicans have wrestled with Senator Mitch McConnell in the Senate falling down multiple times, having public moments where he froze in a press conference situation. The aging politicians is not a partisan issue. I think it's a bipartisan issue that the country should be addressing right now.
Okay. All right, guys, still ahead, our Faith Nation scorecard. This week's biggest political winners and losers. Keep it here. And welcome back to our Faith Nation political panel. All right, gentlemen, in the time we have left, this week's biggest political winners and losers. Let's start with the political losers first, then we'll end with the winners. Raj, to you first. Biggest political loser this week?
So I am a eternal optimist, but I'm gonna say something that's pretty pessimistic. I think we're all losers this week, seeing what happened with anti-Semitism in the United States Capitol. I think this is a canary in the coal mine moment. It always is, and I think it is a real reflection of what's happening in the undercurrent, in the true heart of America. I think there's something rotting inside of it. And I think this permeates a much deeper thing than just, two staffers were killed. I think this is an indication of where we're headed as a country, and we really need to pay attention because this, more than anything, if someone can just be killed in America for being Jewish, that's a problem for the entire political spectrum.
Yeah. Nathan?
In a similar somber tone, I put Congress as the loser with the loss of Congressman Jerry Connolly. There was a clip that as Congress was working through the night to pass this bill this week, and some of the members were informed at the committee were informed that Congressman Connolly passed away. You could see that they were visibly bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats, visibly. That news hit them hard because I was a colleague, and so that was I think Congress lost one of their own, and that's so I put them as one of the losses.
Yeah. All right, let's end the show on a little bit more of an upbeat note. Raj, your political winner for this week.
My political winner is our entertainment, that we just passed a bill that we've called the Big Beautiful Bill, that we get to live in an era where ridiculous things like this happen, where we get, airplanes being given to presidents and big, beautiful bills being passed. So my winner is us, that we're at least entertained in the madness.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to be able to laugh about some things, too. That's for sure. Nathan, your winner for this week.
Winner is President Donald J. Trump. He passed a big hurdle by getting the Big Beautiful Bill through the House. He got a new plane, and he also raised tens of millions of dollars for the meme coin company that his family owns. So President Trump is the winner.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Thank you to our political panel, Nathan Gonzalez and Raj Nair. Both of you, great to see you. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend.
See you next time.
You too, Jenna.
Thanks, guys. And that's it for Faith Nation. Have a wonderful weekend and a great holiday. We'll see you right back here again on Monday. Take care.